Така.
So we are ready, I
Absolutely.
think. This session will be delivered in English because I saw we have many international attendees, at least registered for this event. So we will try to make it in English. And I think that it will be really interesting session. The first Q&A focused on power-ups. We had in the past presentations, but mostly focused on specific case, not like Q&A. So this is the first one where we will discuss about specific cases around Power Platform and Power Apps, but not uh, prepared in advance. It will be interactive Q&A. So welcome, Dimcho.
Hi, Misho.
Dimcho is our guest. Dimcho Tsanov is one of the experts on Power Apps in the region. So he's one of the people who really have experience from different aspects. And I'm very glad that he will be able to share his experience. And probably it's good to start with actually how you start to work on Power Apps. Probably this is the first question, quite logical, of course.
Yeah, so just to give you a little bit background of me, I'm mainly a SharePoint guy. So I start with a huge SharePoint experience. And in the past 10 years, I work with SharePoint. And before a year and a half, American company that I'm working with has the case that they want to migrate their SharePoint data to Office 365. And doing this migration, they wanted to fit to everything that is part of the Microsoft 365 platform and eliminate the development work, because on-premise they have a lot of developments. Now moving into the cloud, they wanted to stay in the shape that Microsoft suggests. And the logical thing is, when you speak for SharePoint and forms, you need to customize these forms to fit your needs. And the only way now to customize SharePoint form is Power Apps. So the first move why the client wanted this and why I needed to do and to learn it was because of this, because of SharePoint, because of the customization. And it was 6 months project. We migrate a lot of data, document library. And in the past 3 months, there was another project that followed this, and it was now Power Apps Canvas app, standalone app that aims to do some optimizations. But this is how I face to Power Apps in an enterprise case and scenarios, not only testing at homes.
It's
So
quite
yeah.
interesting, really, because we will discuss about different types of Power Apps, and probably really we have much less on Canvas apps. But yes, it is up to you if you can introduce our guests around the Power Apps concept and what kind of Power Apps we have.
Yeah, so I think this is the most difficult thing when we say Power Apps. And to the clients, I explain it in this way. It is like to say a car, because when we speak for car, we have SUV, we have regular car, we have big cars, buses. So when we are speaking for Power Apps, we need to keep in mind that we have four things. First is the Canvas app. Then it is model-driven app. It is something called portals. And the fourth thing is this thing that I mentioned, SharePoint customized forms. So these four things are very different. And they're Power Apps, but they serve different purposes. And the most important thing when we decide to choose between which one we need to choose is to answer the question, what kind of data these things will use? Because the data make the decisions. This is at least my opinion. Because just an example. So if we're speaking for model-driven app, then this means that the data will be in the common data services. So I'm starting to speak with a lot of terms, but basically this is what even somebody that has no idea about Power Platform and just enter in this call and start listening, he needs to understand that there is different Power Apps types, there are different data sources. But the one that the big investment is in is common data services. And this common data services works with one of the types, which is model driven. Probably I can share some screens and show, but
Yes, please
yeah,
do it.
should I, let me just try to, or you prefer if I share my screen and show it probably?
Yes, it will be easier for our guests.
Yeah, okay, let me then share my screen and how I should do this. Share screen.
You have share screen icon. Okay.
I have browsers. So if you're wondering what I do during Q&A, I'm just reading internet. So this is what we do as a developer, right? Okay, so I'm trying to joke, but I have prepared something. This is on my side. I mean, this is some notes that I put in my head trying to expect questions. But, okay, the way I want to start is like I have some fancy image here. So it is something like that. Let me start to show this and then I'll explain it. But when we are speaking for power apps, as I said, we need to remember this is the thing called Canvas app, the model driven, and the portal. The SharePoint piece that I mentioned came here. It is a specific subset of the Canvas app. And one of the reasons this difference is big is it is because what kind of data they can work with. For example, imagine you have SharePoint list data, or you have an Excel file, and you want to build a Power Apps, and this Power App should do some collecting of data, displaying. Well, you cannot use model-driven app because model-driven app is designed to work with common data services. Instead, you will need to focus on Canvas app. So, but for example, let's imagine you want to expose some data to, again, from SharePoint or Excel to anonymous user. Well, Canvas app, model-driven apps, this works in the authenticated work. So what you need to pick up is portals. And basically, one of the business case that I have with this American company, they want this American company work with big ships cargo. And they want if some driver breaks something on a car, and this car needs to go in a big ship, they want to take their phone and to fill some data and to send it to report an incident. And currently, Power Apps portals is the only thing that gives you anonymous access. It gives so anybody can report this data. So again, this type of Power Apps is very good for this specific case. And portals is basically something as a website. So on a theory, this is the big differences, right? So you will choose one of these things depending on where your data came from. And before, let me just try to show maybe how they look like. And so this is something very simple. This is Designer, where I have built something. This is very, very simple Power Up. And I'll speak later, for example, why experienced developer does not like this screen. But for example, this is something in this way I can drag and drop controls. I have used here some connector to say, okay, use, if you see here is something called SharePoint, there is Planner, a lot of stuff called connectors. So if you use such kind of different data, this is your Canvas app. You came to screen that looks like that. You do some drag and drop controls, some formula, and then you build something that can work on a separate URL. And this is Canvas app. Let's call it. This is the Canvas apps. Rather than that, if you design that, you will start to build brand new app, and you will design the data. In your data, you will focus on, for example, I have an incident. This incident should have injured person. This person should have a manager. Such kind of data structure. You came again in Power Apps. You build your data, and when you run it, now the interface that you see is something like that. For people who have experience with dynamics may say it immediately, wait a minute, this is a dynamics. Well, absolutely. Dynamics 365 is basically model driven app. It is Power Apps with common data services. So I cannot say I'm expert on common data services, and this is something that now I'm learning. But definitely the huge investment is in common data services with Power Apps. My experience and the form that the applications that I built was basically Canvas apps with SharePoint. And now I'll migrate all this from Canvas apps with SharePoint to model-driven app with common data services. And maybe if we speak after 3 months, then I'll be able to compare these two models from an enterprise perspective, but with a really, really common scenario. Because on a theory, if I go to my notes that I try to draw here, if somebody says, okay, Canvas app, if we use SharePoint, I'll use it, model driven app, okay, if we have common data services, for simple cases, all this is right. But for example, now in the case that I go, we hit a problem that Canvas app with huge SharePoint data starts to behave very slow. We have some challenges. And we are thinking, okay, if we go in the different data type, whether this will optimize the things. And I think now the questions about Power Apps are two kinds of things. First is some specific things like how to bind the data table to this control, how to validate the data. But the tricky one is what to use, what to suggest to the people to use. And maybe here is the moment to explain that basically I'm a consultant, so I'm freelancer. And for me, the big problem in this project was I needed to try to explain what to use, whether Canvas app, model driven app. And somewhere here I have put my questions. Yeah, let me just again try to
By
focus.
the way, we have questions from attendees, and you
Oh,
partially cover the first one, which is related to exactly request to provide some examples of business applications when model-driven approach is preferable than Canvas apps. So you already started to explain about this, but probably you can provide some more details.
yeah, I mean, this kind of shaped question is good. So let me just show you what I have built. First of all, I didn't get officially permission to show what I'm doing with this client, but I can just show you from end perspective how it looks in the browser. So, for example, what I'm showing here is SharePoint. So this is one big list that it has 5,000 and more items. And here, this is something that looks native to SharePoint, but this is a Canvas app. So in this Canvas app, I have connectors that I have connected to 8 different SharePoint lists. Even if you don't know SharePoint, imagine I'm speaking for one big SQL table with different tables. And the business logic here is, if you see good my screen, there is section. For example, this is called issues and opportunities. So imagine somebody break a hand during his work. He came here and start filling the information that he has, so on. Then he closed the form, and then this form goes to some managers. They fill here action assessments, why this happened, and so on. They need to take some actions and such kind of form. This is Canvas app. The reason I built it with this way was because all data was in SharePoint. But if I need to start from scratch and I can choose the technology, for this specific case, I'll choose model-driven app, because model-driven app here are exactly like that. You have a sequence of actions. You have a flow of that this entity will go. And model-driven app have a good way to define this rule and to define these validations. So this is, I think this case, if I have enough time to convert it to model-driven app, will be the perfect scenario to compare, as this question is, this case. So, and to see in action what's better and what's not. But just one note in the context of all this, when we are speaking what to choose, right? Model driven or canvas app? I think this is the first question we need to ask is basically not what to choose, but we need to ask the people this: how many people will use the form? And you might think this is not relative, but it is, because the pricing of model-driven app requires to have common data services and to have pro licenses for each user that will use the form. And now going back in my case where I'm showing you a register that anybody in the company should be able to report. And the company is 5,000 plus people. If they need just for this register to buy pro licenses to each user and to support common data services, this is a lot of money. So in this case, this does not make sense. Rather, it's better to use Canvas app with limitations, but to stay in the low price. But for example, if you're building something that will target 20, 30, 50 people, the sales team or something, and you start from scratch, then it makes sense to go directly with model driven apps, because then the cost will be least. So that's why I have listed here these questions, and I think from here you should start. Not what to choose, but let's understand first the data. For me, understanding the data, understanding whether there is a previous data that you need to migrate is very important, because if you want to get a lot of data, put it in the model driven app, you need to fit in the entities you defined. And for example, do you see the third question? If the quality of data is bad, how you will fit in this model driven app? It will be not possible. So for me, the right answer is you will choose the right form based on the data you have and the people that will use it.
Thank you. It is really very interesting. And probably after this explanation, it is good to share some insights how exactly works the pricing model for Power Apps.
Yeah, this is, I think this is the most tricky question. Again, because let me start from, again, I'm speaking from the context of the project I did, because there are many things if you go in the documentation. But let's first start with the Canvas app. Again, I will try to move to the picture that I used to help me showing. Yeah, so let's focus here on this picture. So if you're in the case of Canvas app, so let's first start with the pricing, right? The licensing. So usually this is focused for enterprises, and usually the company will have some of enterprise, how it's called, E3, E5, some of these enterprise licenses per user. With these things, some free licenses are coming. So, for example, if you're aiming to create Canvas app that will use SharePoint as a data source, and your company has a E3 license, everything is fine. You will not need any additional costs. But if you then decide that your Canvas app, you want to connect with common data services because of something, then we have this challenge that whoever is going to use your Canvas app needs to have pro license for Power Apps, which will grant the licensing for common data services. So again, starting from Canvas app, you can use it for free as part of your subscription, the company subscription. But if you bring common data services, now you need to go to the pro licensing. If you directly start from the model-driven app, this directly requires everybody who is going to use this app to have pro license, because this by default work with common data services. And the scenario that for the client that I work was very interesting. Again, they want also to open this register to absolutely anonymous person. What we not decide, but we were also consult from the Microsoft Norway. One user with pro license needs to create this portal, needs to set up the form and everything. And then there is no extra cost for the not authenticated users. So basically they will able to use it as an anonymous. And again, this is tricky question. You ask very good questions, but based on your scenario, you need to deep dive. But I think this is the main things, right? You have free license, and based on what you want to attach as a service for the Canvas app, as I said, you will go. Yeah, and last note on the licensing, you need to follow this, because I would say maybe on 3-4 months there are some modifications. And just because I'm speaking for power apps, but when we're speaking for licensing, it's also important to understand how we license flow as well. Because one of the case I have is I created a power app and it calls a flow. But this flow has actions of call HTTP. And to use this HTTP action, I needed to have pro license. So that's why Power Apps, Flow, this combination, you need to follow what you use. I mean, I cannot give a more specific answer, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you for this detailed explanation. And could you explain also what kind of challenges you meet with different type of power-ups?
Yeah, let me first start with some of the challenges I have during the development, and this was mainly for Canvas app. Again, here with Canvas app, I have a lot of experience, and this is what I did. Now I'm going to compare these solutions with model-driven app. So definitely model-driven app is something I know only from demos and small things. I cannot claim that I have deep dive in the model-driven app so far. So just want to be honest with you. But when I was working with Canvas app, my first challenge was how we work multiple people on this. So we have one form. I have 2 developers that help to me. And we were at the positions that, okay, we have one big form. If you remember, I showed you this very simple test form, and this is called a screen. So we have one screen. Here we have a form. And what happens if we have multiple screens, for example, and we want one of the developers to work on the submission of the incident, while the other one will work on the next sections. As if you remember here, see, this is one huge form. How can we separate our works? And we didn't find a good solution, because the idea here behind the Power Apps is business user, this is actually a little bit marketing statement, but let's say one user to be able easily to create a form, to drag and drop controls, to connect to some data sources. And this is not designed for multiple people to work on it. This is not like a real source control or GitHub, so you can have commits, you can merge all this. No. So the huge challenge, first challenge with Canvas app, I'm pretty sure this is applicable for model driven, is you cannot work multiple people. What we did is we create a copy, one work on this section, the other work on this section, then one people lose a lot of time to merge, and it was a pain. But if you work one person, it's fine. So that's why I think this is the first things people will somehow understand when they go in a real project, complex project. And yeah, first thing, people to work multiple on one form. And the second thing is versioning. Can we have branches? Let's say I develop this functionality today, I start working on a different branch, then I ship only this change. Well, imagine you work on one PowerPoint. I mean, okay, do it, hide your slides, give it to somebody, and in this way. So at least for me, this was the tricky moment. Yeah.
We
Uh,
have one interesting question.
did
If you
we?
use Azure DevOps for merging different Power Apps development branches.
Well, we don't have real branches. I mean, if I just go here in my forms, I mean, this is what I'm saying. They're not really branches. They're just different versions of one file. Absolutely. And what we do is we copy this form. People work on a different copies, and then manually we merge. If there is a way with DevOps to merge all this, probably something I'm not aware of and I'll explore, but as I know, there is no way to do this because, for example, let me show you. Now I'm clicking here on one of the app. This is one of the apps that I built. And if you go to, basically I open it with the wrong user, but from the version history, you can see, for example, 600 version that I do. But there is no real branches, unfortunately. And this is a challenge.
Do you have any approach where you can split your application to have different forms which can be decoupled and different people to work on such kind of parts of the whole solution?
Uh, Exactly, but this goes through to make a copy. So imagine this form now that I'm showing. I can create save as if I have permissions, of course, and to have something like version 1, version 2, version 3. One of the developers work here, the other here, and third here. And at the end, we manually merge this here. And at least I didn't find a good way to do it. I have one link, maybe after this call, I'll share several links that I have collected where one MVP, I think, explained a good concept to split your work on components. And but it sounds good. We but it does not work for us. I mean, because with the idea with Power Apps is you should be fast. I mean, you really somehow develop all these things, but there is no versioning. So you work on one form.
But the idea for components in general is applicable, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So to have, for example, yeah, true. For model-driven apps, for example, there is some solution. So you can package your things as a solution to deploy them and to work. So that's why I'm using the example of Canvas app. Once, from my experience with Dynamics CRM, I know that when you do some customizations, you can then export specific entity and resources as a managed or unmanaged package. And then this package, imagine this is a zip file, you can go and on a different environment that have the same setup and to import it. And if it is unmanaged solution, you can continue working. And I think for model-driven app, this will work. So exactly, to use packages, solutions, and to redeploy. But for Canvas app, we didn't find a way to do this.
Understand. And it is also interesting to share some experience. What is the advantage for independent consultant, for the freelancers to work using Power Apps? Because it is something which is probably very applicable for most of our guests at this streaming.
Yeah, so I'm freelancer. Let's say this again, and I'm freelancer from 8 years. When I quit my company and decided to start freelance to work as a freelancer, my big problem, and I doing SharePoint things. My big problem was that at some stage the projects get complex, and there is no way one person's to do everything because the project just required multiple people, somebody to develop this, somebody to do this. It's time consuming, and nobody from the business side wants to wait, and this is a problem. somehow you need to go and start hiring people if you want to survive and you want to be fast and deliver solutions. Why I start be a big fan of power of the power apps and with this power platform is because now it allows single people like me and like the people that look are now listening, single people to build very fastly small to medium projects. Because I have done this with one of the companies that I work here in Bulgaria. When I present all this to them, I told them, okay, pick up something. And their case was, for example, a system that should register client requests if something breaks in the software or something. So they pick a very simple scenario, and they estimate it as 2 months that two developers will do it using Angular, some nice technologies, .NET Core under it. Well, this with Power Apps, with some limitations that came from Power Apps, Canvas apps, I can do it for 3 weeks just because it's totally different. And the focus for this power platform, yes, it is low cost, but it's not low price, right? This needs to be clear. But absolutely, it enables single developers, freelancer consultants to build small to medium projects alone. Yes, you need to know how to build these formulas here in the Power Apps. You need to have time to learn about model driven, but at the end, single person can do a big project. And the project that I do the past 3 months, I do it alone as a consultant developer. Of course, I have 3 business persons that helps, that gives me requirements. And this is, I think, the right way. If you want to be a freelancer, you need to start being a consultant, and being a consultant, you can uh, use these tools to build projects. And what I mean consultant, maybe the example from the previous question, what we should choose between Canvas app or model driven. Well, the right question first, what kind of data you have, how many people will do it, and when you collect all this, then you will pick up between them. So definitely freelancers, single consultants now with this power platform are now in a very good positions to do business.
Probably another interesting point is what is the common between Power Apps and other solutions from Power Platform? Why we actually have all these solutions, including Power BI, Power Automate, and virtual agents on top of the same platform?
What's the advantage of all this, or
In general, how you understand the connection, the
mhm.
common things between all these solutions.
Yeah, actually, exactly the common thing between all this is that they can work easily together because they are part of one environment. And I think this is the huge thing here because I have one link that I will paste it in the chat. Steve Jobs, 2097 years, shows how the best code that works always is the code that the developer does not write. I mean, and this is a good concept, and this concept for low code things are not new. But now having cloud, having the idea that the business move to the cloud and you have Azure Active Directory, which means all users are there. You have the subscription model, so you can have for free Power Apps, but if you want to go in a specific more complex scenario, you can add licenses for specific user or for more users. So the big thing between all this for me is that being in the cloud, they can easily integrate. Microsoft provide a lot of connectors. So if I want to bring the SQL data in Power Apps, I should not understand much from SQL. If you want to bring data from SharePoint to Power Apps, you should not understand. Yes, you need to have the basics, but you should not be an expert. You don't need DevOps skills to build packages, manage store procedures, or whatever. So definitely, I think the good thing is that again they're in one cloud. they work with one Azure directory. Microsoft do a lot to integrate them, and definitely common data services starts to be the big thing in the game. Yes, it is expensive. Many companies or big enterprises will wait a little bit until they really understand or they see benefits to pay all this money. But definitely, and something else why I like again power platforms, well, all this simplifies the things. And what I see is, for example, many experienced developers does not like the power platform idea. You have no idea what is if you show this to somebody who understands from polymorphisms, who can write code, classes, he knows how to inherit, he follows the latest thing in C sharp, he knows all specifics, he can work with Angular, with React, he is aware of this in this framework, and then I show this designer where I'm saying, okay, if you want, look, this here, everything is integrated. We are in one environment. We have connectors. If you drag and drop one control, and they just say, no, this is not serious, because many people, again, especially experienced developers, they absolutely don't agree that this will live or this will survive during the time. But this is not true. The Microsoft see huge investment here, huge benefits to the business. So if somebody is wondering, should I go and again all these tools that are in this picture, should I a little bit read, test, and see, okay, they're in one platform, they're connected, well, definitely try.
But
Yeah.
do you think that actually development for such kind of solutions is easy when you need to have some common scenarios, but if you need to have something specific, you need to have deep understanding and you need to be really very experienced developer?
Here, yeah, I mean, if you want to build something very custom with this, you need to be experienced, and this that's absolutely true. And this is maybe somehow business user thinks that this is very easy. Okay, you do it for 1 month, but just for example, so when you have very complex form, but it needs to get some data, yes, you trigger flow, but this flow then needs to do an HTTP request somewhere, and this HTTP request use REST service. You need to put something in this header to authenticate, and then here it is a nightmare. So definitely you need to understand HTTP, you need to understand REST services. So as you said, for this tricky scenarios, you need to be really experienced developer, especially if you integrate services. So data from one system to appear in the another system on manipulation. So definitely you need to be experienced. But again, what I said, some people that like the coding model don't accept this somehow. I mean, at least this is what I see.
We have one interesting question, which is related to exactly this part of our discussion from Pavel Benev, who is asking what kind of limitations we have in Power Apps.
Yeah, definitely there is no system. I mean, here you have limitations. So let me first start with this. Let's again go to here about the types. If we decide how I can move this, maybe like that, sorry. But it depends from the type of the app you choose. Okay, I lost myself in my notes. But let's speak about the Canvas app. If the people that want this app wants to have something very customized as an interface, this to appear in this way, you need to pick up Canvas app and work with the controls that they have, because model driven app you cannot customize. So whenever you go to the model driven app, it is exactly the screen that I just showed before some seconds. Now I lost myself in the screens, but one of the big limitation is in the interface. It is limitation because basically you don't change any, you cannot change, for example, this screen. See how here there's some things pinked here, there's some buttons. If you want to customize this, you cannot. If you go to a Canvas app and say, okay, now I want on a mobile screen this to look like that, on a tablet to look, here you have much more options to do this. But again, for example, one of big problems that I faced is some controls are not mobile friendly. For example, the data picker is really awful control and you cannot customize it. People need to live with how unuseful is this control at this moment, because for the future it will fix. So speaking about limitations, the first thing is what people see. So if you choose Canvas app, you have you have control on what and how to be displayed. With model driven apps, you don't have. When we go one level up under this about the data source, well, Canvas apps can be connected with everything through these connectors, which sounds great. But what about if I want to connect with, for example, SharePoint list that has more than 5,000 of items? Two things. First of all, there is some settings in Power Apps that says how many items you can bring in the UI. And the second thing is, and see here you have 500. And the next thing is the system that you query, it again has some threshold stuff. So the UI changes is one thing, somehow you do it. But when you go to the connecting to the data, the limitations there are big, and uh, they depends on the data source. For SharePoint is one, for SQL is different. So definitely when you go to big data, you need to read Microsoft white papers, how to index and what to do. And I see one question, maybe.
Yes, we have one more about actually big data, how you can
Mhm.
use millions rows of data from the same guest.
Yeah, that's why I start. Yeah, so for example, the solutions that I'm now testing, again, the first thing is you need to know the data source that you use. And here I'm speaking in the context of Canvas app that use connector. For example, I think even in model driven app, you can use again connector and bring some data, but this is not the idea. So that's why when I speak for connectors, I stay in Canvas app. And this value is basically how items you can get. But for example, some of the functions in Power Apps, like filter, the function called filter, it supports delegation, which means that, for example, for a SQL, you can ask filter all rows on the issue ID column. And if issue ID column is indexed in the SQL, this will work even with million data, but what you will receive should not exceed this limit. So and my case with SharePoint was exactly like that. If you want, give me something for this IDs and you get 5, 10 items, this works because the filter function support delegation and the source, which is SharePoint, supports this delegation.
Do you
So,
have
mhm.
some kind of pagination here, similar approach?
uh, I'm not sure, to be honest, because what if you want paging, you need to do it. So you need. I'm not sure. Let's not speak something that I haven't tested. So, but definitely this is now the good questions. This is questions more in how to build it and the limitations that you don't expect. But all this you need to test, and again based on the connector to see what this connector support.
Understand. And probably is also very interesting to share some experience how to distribute such kind of applications. Even this question probably can be related to what we have as marketplace, and is it possible to use also custom components developed from third-party companies? Probably you can share interesting experience.
Yeah, so what about if we want to sell all this somehow, right? So basically in 2018, I spent 1 year. I decided that I'll do add-ins. If people who are familiar with Microsoft knows that there is App Source Store, and this is the store for business applications. And I decided that I'll build something only JavaScript related. Then Power Platform, I was not so aware of it. Plus, I don't think there was licensing model or how you can sell something. So then I spent 1 year trying to build something with JavaScript, some nice looking controls that integrates dynamics with SharePoint. And the goal of this integration was to show in an interface inside Dynamics documents from SharePoint. And there was some Azure apps. Uh, I do a lot of crazy things. 1 year, the end result was that I earn zero money, and I failed to build something very stable. I mean, to work without issue people, just to go in the app source and to install it. So that's why when here we speak about can we do something like that here, the first question is exactly as you said, how we can distribute or sell something. Well, the right model is to go through the app source store, but at this moment, I'm not sure whether it supports this. For example, what I mean is you can build something with Power Apps, package it as a solution in the model-driven context. This zip, there is a way you can register on the Azure partner portal. I'm not sure now which portal was for this. When you go a lot of validation, this will end up in the App Store, and somebody can go in his Dynamics or model-driven app and can install it. So definitely, I think this is a good thing that people can research. If I have time, I'll definitely again test all this. How can I sell through a solution, a functionality package as a solution, whether the app source support all this, but at this moment, I'm not sure
I'm
whether it
asking
supports.
you because the approach for Power BI is the same, and I suppose that we have no specific differences. And probably you remember that we have also certified components. You need to be from one side approved for the app source, but you can additionally certify your components. That means it is that doesn't mean it is actually required to certify your components, but if your components are certified, they will cover additional requirements, and usually people can use it for office products and some other platforms.
I'm not sure here. I don't know, to be honest. But if this is for Power BI, I guess for these visuals, right, that you built, probably here is the same, but I don't know. No, but this is really all this technology. What I like is see how many opportunities it opens. So again, single person can quit his job, can spend some time, but of course, if he has the business context and if he identifies that a specific app will be very needed now. And one example of this was the American company that I use when this COVID stuff happened. They found they wanted to have power apps that works for reserving a space in offices. And basically there was somebody who have published free zip file that contains flows, the form. So you just go in your environment, you install there's some configuration, and it worked. And it was distributed as a free things, but many people use it, and especially the company that I'm working with, they wanted I to install this for them, and they start using it. And this is really a good example how you can find something that is needed and it is small, you can package it, and then how to distribute is the next thing. I mean, can you sell it somehow, or as you said, this somehow to be certified so it is proven that this works. And but definitely all these are good opportunities.
What you can recommend for young people who would like to work on power apps, because it is something which is probably very important for many guests who join this streaming, how they can start and what is the most important which they need to know?
Yes, so well, the very first thing is you should answer yourself, does this make sense, or why I should learn power ups? And for me, power ups, let's say you are a tech developer. Okay, and you do a lot of coding. There is no loss of time if you spend some time learning power ups just to see what is this new fashion thing and to decide for yourself whether this is good or not, your opinion, but at least you have the knowledge. So tomorrow, if there is an architecture decisions, there is new project, you know, if somebody says let's use power up, you know what is this. If you're an IT architecture, for example, you must know this, because IT architectures, they need to be able to compare custom code against something built with power ups. And if you don't know what is power ups, you cannot compare them. So no matter, or you're a single one man show and you're a single consultant, you know to know the capabilities of this. So definitely the first thing, why I should learn this, for me it makes a lot of sense to spend, invest time learning it. How to do it? Well, I would say first you need to have a subscription, so you can use a trial subscription. So currently I have here a subscription. You can click create, and here for me this is the best way to start. If you see, this is templates. Microsoft have built for use free templates. The way I start with Power Apps is I create almost one instance of all these templates. I open it and I just view how it looks on a mobile, how it looks on my screen. I just go then in the designer, I see some formulas, but the perfect way is, okay, read a little the theory and then came here and in this way. So for example, see canvas up, and somewhere is model driven. So whenever you pick up this, it shows you preview. You can run it, you can touch it. See, this is again in this is like a demo, but you can see what you will have and how this is built. And then you can came back here, create it in your tenant, open this is called the studio, and start exploring it. And this is the best, fastest way to see and to learn power ups. So I would say try it. Don't think that this is not for real developers or this is just fashion thing for the dates. The investment is huge, so just spend time in this way. Buy or get some free subscription, trial subscription, came here, and create these samples and explore. And the company that I mentioned previously, one developer company here, they have exactly the same way, and they use, I think, the ticket system from here. Just they connected with their SQL, and this was good exercises for them. They have something very fast, and they learn power ups. So I think this is my answer.
Thank you. And we have again one question related to version control and merging from different environments, from test to prot environment, from Christ to Christoph. I
Mhm.
think that about merging, you already explained some things and issues, but if you are able to share also some experience about versioning, it will
Mhm.
be good.
Well, first of all, something I think I didn't mention is when you build something in one environment, you can zip this and bring it to another environment and restore it. I mean, you just upload the zip and the Power Apps will take the processing. If there is, for example, flow that is code from the Power Apps, it will came in this zip package. But so if you deploy these things between the different tenants, it will work. Also, something that we do is we grab this file and put it again inside the same tenant, inside the same environment. And this is how we have dev beta testing. But for example, let's say I have one app that I have called it dev. I extract it, I re-upload it, and I re-upload it with the new naming beta. And then I can grab this and put it with the new name production. So next time I build new version in dev, I get again the package, I export, import, but it overrides the previous. So basically, my opinion is that this versioning is the tricky moment. It is a challenge because you don't have source control. You just have versions of file. So I'm not sure how it sounds, but this is really tricky. I mean, this is you need to be careful. You don't have source control again. You just do new versions of one file.
I see
Yeah.
that we for now have no additional questions, but probably you can share something at the end, something which is probably the most important for people who would like to work on such kind of solutions.
Yeah, let me try to sell you the idea, right? So, well, definitely my short message will be try Power Platform and invest time in Power Apps and common data services. Try the different things that I mentioned, Canvas apps with some source, Canvas apps with common data services, model driven app with services. Came here that I show you, try to create some blank templates, all apps from these templates. All this time won't be lost. The huge investments that Microsoft do is in this direction. So just stay in this thread, follow the changes, even if you don't use it. But there is a lot of project and money that will be focused on this technology. So for me, it makes sense a lot to learn it. And this is constantly learning, right? Everything now, no matter whether it's Power Apps or .NET or just some CSS frameworks, it is constantly learning and following people that are MVPs or that contributes and the product teams. So again, my advice is spend time on this yourself, test it, and then you will have the answers.
Thank you very much. It was really very useful. At the end, I would like to share also some information about next event where probably we will have a lot of content on Power Platform and Power Apps. It is a global Microsoft 365 developer bootcamp, and Bulgarian edition is on 5th of November. So we will have online event on Microsoft 365, and we will try to make it more interactive with more Q&A in a most efficient way for all people who are interested in this platform. So thank you very much. Thank you, Dimcho, for everything, for the good experience sharing and for your time, and hope to see you soon again at our Q&A sessions and events.
It was a pleasure for me. Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night for you and all our guests.
Thanks.